So again, welcome. Today we're going to be covering kind of topics related to resources that are available to you as you start or continue to use the AngelTree program within TSAM. We want to make sure that you are aware of what resources are out there, how you can best utilize those, and then of course answer as many questions as we have time for. But just really quickly, because there are so many people new to TSAM AngelTree this year, I want to take just a really quick moment to talk about kind of what is it and a little bit of the background of it just a couple of minutes. So the AngelTree program within TSAM was developed by our company. Our company is called Data Paradigm. It's a software development company based out of Dallas, Texas. We have a really great relationship and history with the Salvation Army. We've been providing different software tools for over 20 years. You will have seen things probably like Meeting Manager and different TSAM modules and different things that we've developed with the Salvation Army over the years. We're really proud of that fact. We love working with the Army and love being able to provide the tools that help you help people. AngelTree is a module within TSAM that was developed starting back in 2015, initially with the Dallas-Fort Worth Area Command, who run a very large AngelTree program. They approached us and said, "Hey, let's utilize some of those tools that we already have and add to it, and really come up with kind of a one-stop shop for managing your full AngelTree campaign, your full AngelTree solution." So we took on the challenge and we started working with them back in 2015, and that has grown. And grown and grown and grown every year since then. Last year, in 2021, we served over 500 locations nationwide, so across all 4 territories in the U.S. And you all, those of you who used it last year, helped process over 650,000 angels through the system last year. So it's gaining traction every year. Every year we try to keep up with the demand and try to provide more and more helpful solutions along the way. So we've been doing it for a while now. But of course, there's always more to learn and always areas to improve. And so that's why we wanted to take some time today to talk through what support you have available to you, what resources you can use to get more information as this thing is kind of growing and changing, how you can kind of keep up to date. So I'm going to pause here for just a moment and jump over to our actual AngelTree screen. And again, just talk through a couple of things about how you can stay in touch and informed. So let me get this sharing here. All right, so as you get started this year, a couple of things that you really want to take note of is a couple of different ways that you can reach us, that we can reach you, and some different resources that are available, because you are going to have questions. AngelTree is a complicated logistical program that you all run. I know I don't have to tell you that. You know way better than me. You're the boots on the ground, so you know how complicated it can be. And there's a lot of different elements to AngelTree. And of course, because our software is designed to be kind of a one-stop shop for all, handling a lot of those elements, there are a lot of different areas, and you will have questions, and you'll run into to things that you need to figure out how to configure for your specific scenario. So a few different things. Number one is our announcement feature. So this is something that we put in place to try to stay in better contact with you as the users of the AngelTree program. If you look on the menu bar, you'll see the announcements. It's in red up here at the top, and you'll see there's a little red number 3. That means that there are 3 announcements that have been published from us to you that you will probably need to take a look at. So those can be all kinds of things. It could be new features. So if we push out any new features that may be helpful to you, we will send that as an announcement, and you will see that here. So you'll be able to click on the announcement, read through. There will be links to documentation about how to use those new features, these kinds of things. So if you see that red badge up at the top that has a number in it, that means there are announcements that you haven't read yet that you need to see. So you want to make sure to take a moment to look at those. They could be very important. So things like new features, we may also, if we notice issues with your campaign or elements that haven't been set up yet, or kind of any red flags that pop up on our end, we will also send an announcement specific to your campaign. So it may say something like, it looks like you've moved on to distribution, but you haven't done this XYZ setup. So you may want to look out for things like that. I really highly encourage, if you see any new announcements there, to take a moment to read them. They're never going to be unimportant, I would say. So if we're getting a lot of questions through our support about the same thing, we'll publish FAQs and things like this about it, but we'll also maybe send it as an announcement so that we can kind of catch you before you have that question or before it becomes an issue for you. So definitely take a few moments to look through the ones that are already there. And going forward, if you see any kind of notification badges there, you will be able to click those and read through. Okay, so speaking of FAQs, I'm going to move over here under the Resources tab. I'm not sure that everybody knows these are here. I do think they're really useful and valuable, so I want to make sure that everybody is aware. Under Resources, there's a FAQ tab. What you'll see here is a library of frequently asked questions. A lot of these have walkthroughs with screenshots that show you exactly how to do some of these things. So these can be really useful to you if you're not a learner. Like, we have videos and things like that, but some people would rather read it step by step, things like that. You'll see a lot of those here. Another thing I'm not sure that everybody is always aware of is that this is searchable. So for example, I get a question often about angels, and there are fields that are specific for girls versus boys, and how come this field called the blouse isn't showing up? Well, if I come here to FAQs and I actually type in the word blouse, it will do a search and it will bring up the question that specifically goes with that keyword, and it will even highlight the area within that FAQ that is related to that. So if you're searching for something particular, go ahead and search the FAQ, see if you can come up with the answer there. That is a really helpful resource. If you're not aware that those are there, that may be something you want to keep an eye on. As we start to get questions through our support channels, and even through a webinar like this, you may see your question today turned into an FAQ later that someone else can browse. So we try to keep those up to date. Definitely make sure to take a browse there if you have a specific question. If your question is less specific and more about how do I even use this thing, or a little bit more broad and in the realm of, I need to train myself on this whole program, the best resources for that is going to be under our training videos. So under the resource tab, you'll see a link to training videos. That's going to take us out to the TSAM YouTube channel, where we post all kinds of content and training materials for our various modules, specifically Angel Tree. So you'll see there's lots of different options here. You can kind of tell by the description what that particular video is going to be about. We tried to do videos where we segment, where we say, okay, this is a video, for example, that's all about user admin. So if you're wanting to come up to speed on that, you can do a quick few minutes and come up to speed on user admin and how to add users, how to remove users, how to manage users, that kind of thing. So we try to kind of chunk it out and make shorter videos that have really specific information. What you'll also see here is recordings of previous webinars and things like this that we've done, where they're a little bit longer. You can see there's hours worth of trainings here. But we do record all of the sessions that we do so that you can go back and refer to them. So make sure to take a look through this. If you are brand new, if you are totally brand new to the system, this is going to be golden for you. You really want to walk through, especially these probably first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6 videos at least, which really give you an idea of the entire program overview, the different options that you have, and how to actually set up and configure your campaign. Almost all of the questions that we get later down the road come back to how the campaign was set up. So the more you can learn and understand about setting up and configuring your campaign, the better off you're going to be down the road. So if you're totally brand new, make sure to go and take some time. I know it can be a little bit overwhelming at first, but take the time to learn it. And then the great thing is year over year, that knowledge transfers, and you can bring forward your settings from the year before, and everything just gets easier and easier as you go. So definitely take a minute to take a look through there. Like I said, probably those first 6 videos are going to be your most important to really get your feet wet. As we push new content, if there are new features, we'll publish a video here. You may want to subscribe to this channel. That will help you keep up to date. If we post any new trainings or any new videos, you might want to keep up to date with that. Feel free to subscribe to the channel as well. Okay, so videos going to be very helpful, again, if you're brand new especially, but even if you just need a refresher on a specific topic, like how intake works or how to set up my campaign, make sure to take a look at those videos. And then beyond the FAQs and the training videos, if you do find yourself with questions, okay, I've set up my campaign, I've actually started to use it, but I'm running into this particular issue, or I've set up my campaign, but it's not working the way that I thought it would, what can I do? If you still have those types of questions, you're absolutely encouraged to reach out to us. We have a support team standing by to take any of those requests and make sure we get you the help you need. So to do that, just click on email us. That will launch an email to our support team. It's tsamsupport@dataparadigm.com, which will open a ticket with our support team, and we'll be able to communicate with you that way and make sure that your problem gets resolved or that we get you the answers that you need. So those are kind of your four tips for how to get the support you need for AngelTree. Make sure to keep an eye on the announcements. If you have questions, check out the FAQ and the training videos first. And then if you still have questions and want to reach out to us, you can do that by emailing the support team. Okay. So that's kind of my spiel on the little bit of background of AngelTree, a little bit of how to kind of help yourself with some of the resources that we have. But now I just want to dedicate the rest of the time to any questions that we've received. We do have a list of questions that we received ahead of time. But again, if you have questions specifically that you want us to answer, go ahead and pop those in the question box. We do have people standing by to answer those questions, and then we'll also share them with the group if it's something that kind of pertains to everyone and if we have enough time. All right, so I'm just going to go through I don't think these questions are in any type of order. They kind of are a little bit random because they pertain to all different areas. I did try to group together the ones that were similar and try to answer a few questions at a time. So we're just kind of going to go along for the ride and answer these questions kind of as they came. Let's see. A good question, we get it often, is I'm setting up my campaign, but I don't know where my Christmas warehouse is going to be yet. I don't have a distribution site. So let's go over to our campaign admin. Hopefully most of you are very aware of the campaign setup, and you've already at least been through this once or twice. You've touched it and are kind of up to speed a little bit on these settings. If you're not, I would recommend going to the training videos and specifically looking over the campaign setup videos. There's a lot of detail here, and a lot of this needs to be right in order for your campaign to run smoothly. So I'm not going to go into all the detail. I'm just going to answer the question specifically as it was asked. So the question is, if I don't have a distribution site yet, how can I go ahead and start intake without my distribution site? So you can definitely do that. So I'm here under sites. So admin campaign sites. You can see here we have all kinds of sites already set up. But let's say I want to add one for my distribution. What I would do is just put a placeholder there. So I'll click add it, create a new site. I would go ahead and fill it out. I would call it something like get my keyboard in the right place. So I'll add my warehouse, but what I will not do is add an address. So I'll go ahead and add it because I need a placeholder for it, but I would put something like this, like TBD as the address, and I would save that. Then from there, you can go over to your distribution sites, and it will show up here. Even though it doesn't have an address yet, it will show up here. You can still configure the codes. You can still associate it to your intake site, which is what will allow you to actually start intake by associating it here on the intake site. So even though it doesn't have an address, you can still do that. Now, what is very important about that is when you start doing your intake and you start assigning distribution appointments, those will send an email to the applicant to say your appointment has been set for such and such a date. Under the address, it will say to be determined, right? Because there is no address in there yet. So the important thing is, once you do get that address, you need to go back to the site. You need to click on the site and you need to add the address. What that will do is when the appointment reminder goes to the applicant 24 hours before their appointment, it will have the address in there because you've added it since then. So it's okay to start without an address. That's fine. It will just show again that the address is kind of TBD. And that's fine, but you want to make sure that you get it in there no later than 24 hours before your first distribution appointment, so that people who are receiving those reminders will actually have the address and know where to go. Okay, so we get that question a lot. It's okay to do. That's the only kind of one little caveat is to make sure that you go back and add it before those appointments start. Kind of in a similar vein, while we're on the topic, another question that I have here is, how can I supply additional information with those appointment reminders? So let me back it up a level actually and talk about the different emails that the system will automatically send your applicants. So at the point that they start their application, if they're applying online, at the point where they start their application, it will send them an automated email to say your application has been started, and here is a link back to it in case you get lost. Because oftentimes what we'll find is people will start an application and then just kind of disappear, or close their browser, or want to come back and finish later, but then they close that tab on their phone or something like that. So we do send them an automated email to say you started your application and here's a link back to it. So that's great. Once their application is submitted, they are notified that their application has been submitted and is pending approval. And then it's not until the point where you update that application to admin approved, that's when they will receive a notification that says your appointment has been set, and it will include the information for whatever appointment you gave them, the date, time, and location, and address if you have one. The system will automatically send that, so they know that they've kind of been accepted and this is when their distribution appointment is. The system automatically does that. And then, like I said before, 24 hours before that appointment, it will send a reminder to say you have an appointment at the same time. It has the code and it has the gift pickup ticket that they can pull up that has their family code, their barcode, and that's what they should be showing you when they show up for distribution. So the question that we get is, well, how can I add some additional information to those emails? Or how can I additionally reach people and give them further information? So a couple of different things. Still here under our admin screen, if I go to distribution, and I click on the edit pencil here, so I'm going to take this one, DFW Plano Core at First United Methodist. You'll see that there is a text area here, a text box. So what I can do is I can type instructions here. So things like park in back of church slot or something like that, right? I can say things like, be sure to bring X, Y, and Z. Be sure not to bring your kids. Park over here. Whatever instructions and additional information you want to provide. If you put that here in our distribution kind of edit screen, then any applicant who receive a distribution appointment at this location, this one happens to be DFW Plano Core. Anyone who receives an an appointment at that particular location, the email will contain this message. Okay, so that's something that can be really, really helpful to you. I'm not sure that everybody knows that's there, so that's a really great tip. I'm glad somebody asked about that. So you just enter that in there and then click Save Changes down here at the bottom. I'm not going to save these changes, but just click Save Changes, and then all of those automated emails will contain your additional messaging. An extra layer on top of that, if you want to, next to this edit pencil here, you'll see this paperclip icon. If I click on that, you'll see there's a place where I can upload documents. So along with the email, maybe I want to attach a map of the church parking lot that shows them where they're supposed to go, or a flyer that shows information about pickup times and church services and whatever else it is you want to send to them. So you can add attachments here. If the attachments are here, that means when the appointment confirmations and appointment reminders go to them, this information will be contained in there. Okay, so a really helpful way to kind of piggyback the automated notifications that the system is already sending to include your campaign-specific information. Another way that you can reach your applicant is if I go here under admin, I'll click send communication. So this was a newer feature in the last couple of years. Maybe everybody doesn't know about that, but this is a way to send mass communications to your applicants. Some great use cases we've seen for this is there is a really, really bad weather situation on the day of distribution, and they needed to tell people, stay away, we're going to reschedule for another day, that kind of thing. So they needed to be able to reach people right away. This mass communication tool is really handy for that. So it tells you these are the kind of steps for this process. So I can go here and I can filter in and choose which people I want to notify. In that specific scenario, it was really easy to target applicants who were coming to a specific distribution site on a specific day. So I wanted to send it only to the people who are scheduled to come here, on this day to this location. Now, of course, there aren't going to be any in here, but the system will go find all of the people who are scheduled for that distribution on that day, and then you can choose. Who knows? Maybe this will pull some people. I don't know. Oh, yeah, it did. Okay. So you can choose whether you want. It says these are the people it's going to send it to. Their email addresses, their phone numbers, if we have them. That is very important. If you think you might need to send text messages or you want to be able to communicate via text messages, we have to have collected their phone number up front. So in your campaign setup, when you're configuring your client application, and you think to yourself, do we not need their phone number? One reason you may want to include that is if you plan on being able to communicate with them via text message. So just FYI. If we have their email and text message, they're listed here. You can also add additional recipients down here at the bottom. So if you want to go run a report from last year and grab email addresses for your applicants from last year, you could go and copy and paste the list into this box. I'll click next, and then here you can compose your message. So you can send it via email, and here you would compose your email. You would also be able to send a test of that email to yourself just to be sure it looks good before you send it. So you can send it by email or text. So here's the text message. You would configure what was in that message. Of course, there's a character limit on the text messages, and there are some additional costs that apply for text messaging. But you can add those in there, or you can choose to do it by email and text message. You could do both. So however you want to send it, you would configure your email and or text message and be able to reach a whole bunch of people at one time really quickly. So that's another way you can do that. So you can rely on the system to send the appointment confirmations and reminders. That's all great. But if you want to communicate further than that, or at a specific time or in an emergency situation, a good way to do that is, again, I'm here under admin. I want to send communications. That's how you do this kind of mass email or text messages. So that was a great question and a very useful tool that I'm sure not everybody knew about. So hopefully that helps some people out. Let's see here. A really important question here that I definitely want to answer. We got that one. Okay. Another one that I really want to answer is to do with online applications. So as most of you know, and most of you are already using, I'm sure, the online application feature for AngelTree. This is really kind of what sets TSAM AngelTree apart, and I think has a lot to do with why it's been adopted so well. Like I said, all across the country, we have CORE using our AngelTree program, and I think this is the main reason, the fact that your applicants can apply online. So that is definitely a learning curve. Again, if you're totally brand new and that's not something you've done before, you want to watch the videos specific to online applications to make sure that you understand kind of all of the elements within that. One of the questions that we get, and it's a really important question, and we do get it often, is, hey, suddenly nobody can apply anymore, right? Suddenly our online applications aren't working. Or I think I've configured it all right, but our online applications aren't working. People can't get through. What's the problem? So I'll give you a couple of different tips on how to kind of troubleshoot that. Usually there's a very solid, well, in fact, 99.9% of the time, there's a very solid explanation for it. And it's pretty easy to diagnose if you know what to look for. So I get a call, somebody says, hey, I'm trying to apply for AngelTree, but I can't get through. It won't let me through. What's going on? This is what I would do. I would come here under my campaign admin, and I'm going to check a few settings. First thing, I'm going to go to my intake tab. And first things first, I'm going to check to make sure that the online applications are open. So that's thing number one. Is it even open? So you can tell if I click on this little edit pencil here, let's do next to the Angel Factory. I can see whether it's open or closed. Okay, so that's thing number one. If it's not open, nobody's going to get through. That's pretty straightforward. That's really easy. Another thing is to check your invitation code settings. If you have invitation codes set to required, then of course the people have to have an invitation code to be able to get through. In that case, probably the person who called you up would have said, but I don't have an invitation code. And then you would know what to do. You would know how to get them one. But that could be something. But if it's just straight up not allowing them through, the other thing that I would check is the zip code. So let me click on this one here. If you haven't set this up already, this is something that you need to do. It's probably the most tedious part of getting your campaign set up, is entering all of the zip codes in your serviceable area. So if someone is trying to apply, they're putting in their zip code, but it's not one that you have configured here, they're not going to get through. So that's really important. Check what zip code these people are trying to apply with and make sure that it is included in your setup. Okay? And then lastly, and kind of the most common one that we are often troubleshooting, is when you set up your, let's look at this one, when you set up your intake sites and you turn on online applications, you have the option to put a max number of applications. Most units will put a max number here. And that's because you don't want to just, take an unlimited number of applications. You don't want to just open the floodgate. Because once people find out something's available online, they're gonna go there, right? And you're probably gonna have more applicants than you ever thought. So a lot of places will put a max number there. But what happens with that max number is once you reach it, it won't let anybody else through. So if my max number is 100 applications, if I'm the 101st person to go there and start an application or try to start an application, it's not going to let me through because we've reached the maximum. Okay, so the question is, how do you as an administrator know that that's the problem? How do you know that you've reached the max? That is mostly the case. When this question comes up, 9 times out of 10, the answer is you've reached your maximum. So to check that, what I would do is I would come under the applicant records report, and there's a very special tip that you need to keep in mind here while that loads. And that is that we need to include the draft applications. So I said this earlier. That when you start an application, we will automatically notify the applicant, okay, your application has been started. Here's where you can go back and finish it, and we give them a link to it to come back later. Well, that application sits in what we call a status of draft. That draft application counts towards your max total, because we need to give them time to finish it. We want them to, have time to go through all of the different steps, add the required documents, and so on and so on. And that can take some time. So it's not about the first 100 that get submitted. It's about the first 100 that get started. So in order to determine if I've reached that 100 number, when I come here to look at my applicant records, I need to check this box here that says include online draft applications, because that number is going to count towards my maximum. Okay, so I would come here and I would say include online draft, and then I would filter to whichever intake location it is. You may only have one, but if you have multiples, you can filter by that intake location. So I would refresh. And then I'm going to get a count of how many applications we have from draft status onwards. Okay, so it's really important to make sure that you have that include online draft applications box checked. And so we could see here that the total for that particular scenario is 2,281. So if my maximum number is 2,281, that means I've reached it. And that's why nobody else can get through. Okay, that question comes up a lot, and that is something you want to keep an eye on. We've taken that kind of feedback because we're getting that question so often, and we're going to go ahead and add some tools that allow you to see more quickly when you have reached your maximum. But this is how you can do it. Only trick is making sure that you include the draft applications. So let's say I have reached my max. What do I do next? We say, oh, yes, you're right. I have reached my maximum, but you know what? We want to allow more applications. You can do several things. First of all, I can go back to my campaign admin. I can go back to that intake site, and I can just update the number. I can just increase the maximum number. Okay, so the moment I increase the maximum number, then people will be able to get through again, right? As long as there are open slots, people will be able to get through. So that's one way to do it. But sometimes you don't really want to do that because you still only want, your 1,000 applications, but you want to get rid of some of these draft applications. Maybe these people started these applications, but it's been weeks now and they haven't finished them. So we kind of want to purge them. You can do that kind of in a bulk update. If I go here under applicant, bulk application update, I can use my filters. Those filters are really important. I can use my filters to search for draft applications. So remember, I want to select include draft. And maybe I want to filter just to those. And then I can look through these. I can apply additional filters. In this case, there's tons of them, 10,000 of them. This is in DSW, but you would be able to just check the box, scroll down to the bottom, and click delete, and that will allow you to delete all of those draft applications. Now, having said that, there is a little bit of danger to that. You want to make sure that you really want to do that, that you really do want to delete those, because they will no longer be visible in the system. So when someone else calls you up and says, hey, I applied, but likelihood is that you probably deleted them. So you do want to be careful with that, but it is something that we see people do to help with that specific scenario where you want to free up a little more space. So as soon as you delete applications, that just like adding new slots, deleting applications also opens new slots. So immediately people would be able to apply, or new people would be able to apply. So you want to do that with caution, but you can use these filters. Like I said, you can filter by the created date maybe, and only get rid of the ones that are, over a certain threshold, weeks old, that kind of thing. So that's a really good question, and something to keep an eye on if you are using online applications. One question is related to users and volunteers, and how to manage volunteers within your system. So if I go over here under admin and I go to users, this is all covered pretty heavily in the user admin video. So if you do have a lot of questions around this area, I would recommend going there. But just to kind of briefly answer the question, how do I give kind of my volunteers, my non-Salvation Army TSAM using people, how do I give them access to AngelTree? And the way you would do that is by adding them as what we call local users. If I scroll down to the bottom section here, you'll see local users. And it actually gives the definition here. Local users are typically temporary or seasonal or volunteers. They will not have official Salvation Army email addresses, and that's where they can log into the system. So you would add the short answer is you would add them as a local user. The one important thing to understand there is local users have a different way of logging in than your normal Salvation Army employee TSAM users. So if you guys use TSAM every day, you just go to the same place you always go, and you log into TSAM, and bam, AngelTree is there. But for local users, there is a special place that they need to log in. So they can't log in where regular TSAM users log in, and regular TSAM users can't log in where they log in. They are two separate places, and you need to know which one to use. And if you forget where that is, it is here on the user page. It lists it right here, and there's a link to it. So that's how you would kind of include volunteers in your campaign. Can it also be available in Spanish? The online application actually is available in Spanish. If you're not familiar, the online application is at saangeltree.org. If you're not familiar with that, that tells me you probably need to go watch the video on online applications to come up to speed on that. But you can, if you look in the upper right corner, you can actually change the application to Spanish, and the applicant can move through the application in Spanish. A question relating to deleting applications, since we were just talking about that. Can we limit the time that an application stays in draft instead of having to go and delete them one by one? There's no system control that says after a certain number of days these are going to be deleted. But like I just showed, you would use the bulk update to go in there and delete masses or chunks of applications. You don't need to go in one by one and delete them. That would take too long. Let's see. A good question, a fair question about our support and response time on emails. Typically, it depends on how busy the season is, and right now it is pretty busy. So our support times via email are probably 1 or 2 business days. If you find yourself in an emergency, there is also a support hotline number. I'll ask our support team to place that in the chat if you don't have that. There is a hotline number. It's included in all of the FAQs and the training videos. You can find that emergency support line. Again, that's for emergencies. If you find yourself literally you're smack in the middle of distribution and something's going wrong, the site's not pulling up, something to that level, we do have that support hotline as well. But for basic questions, we encourage that you try the support email first. Okay, here's a group of a few questions. So are local users able to log in from their personal PC? Yes, they are, and that kind of can be good or bad. So let me just talk you through that. If you add a local user, you add them with their personal email address, that's fine. They set up their own password. It walks them through a process to set up their password and get logged in. They can log in via this link here from any device that has connectivity to the web. There's nothing that's saying it has to be on the Salvation Army network or anything like that. So that's good, because that means, they can kind of bring their own device and help you. You don't necessarily have to provide them with a computer. They could technically bring their own, maybe even their iPad or something, if you're having them help with intake or these kinds of things. Two kind of, I don't want to say warnings, but I guess they are two things to keep in mind with that, just kind of for security's sake, is number one, you want to be really careful about which permissions you give them. So when you set up a user, it'll ask you which permissions you want to give them. I'll click on one here so we can see what that looks like. You see the permissions listed down there at the bottom. You want to be careful to only give them the permissions they actually need. For example, if you have a volunteer who's going to be, doing nothing but receiving gifts off the truck and marking them as received, you wouldn't necessarily want to give them access to the intake permissions, for example, where they can go and see all of the client data. If they're there just to help with distribution and just need to be able to, to do that part or to make appointments, you want to limit their access to what they actually need access to. If you have somebody who's manning a phone bank to make appointments, then you really only need to give them the appointment permission. You don't want to overshare, I guess. There are people's personal data in here. So you do want to be careful about who you give access to and how much access you give them. So that's one thing. And then understanding that when you add them in here, until you come back later and remove them, which you can do by clicking the red X here, so you can remove a local user just by clicking that red X. Until you remove them, they do have continued access to the platform. So if that's okay with you, if they're a trusted seasonal worker that comes every year and they're there every day during the season, you probably want to give them their own access. However, if it's somebody who is just popping in for the day, you may want to create a more generic user that people can share, and then when they leave, they don't have access to that anymore. Just know that if you do give them access, they can technically reach it not only from their own device, but from their own device at home as well. So if you want to kind of protect that, you want to be sure that you know who you're giving it to and kind of limit that permanent access. And then just go back and clean up and make sure you remove any local users that you don't need anymore or that are not active. All right. A question about, can we make the application available in another language? Technically, yes. The system can manage any number of languages. That's something that if you want to explore, you can reach out to our support team. There's some cost and time involved in that, of getting all the translations set up and those kinds of things. And then the other thing I'll say is, if you're going to add an additional language, you probably need to make sure that there are people at your location that have some passing knowledge of that language, so that when you receive applications, if somebody has entered information in a different language, that you're able to decipher and maybe translate that back. But technically, yes, if you want to reach out to us to explore adding an additional language, we can certainly take a look at that. Can we see a sample of what the applicants see? Yes, but we probably don't have time to do it here. I would suggest going over to the YouTube channel. There is I think a fairly short video. Yeah. No, hold on. Which one is it? Trying to remind myself which one it's in. I think it's going to be online applications. I think that one will walk you through, definitely one of these does. And it looks like our support team already replied back with a specific link for that. But yeah, and I'll go ahead and say as well, this may be a helpful tip that you haven't thought of. You can create applications as a test. We see people do this all the time. If you just want to experience, okay, what does it feel like to enter an application? Go ahead and set your campaign up. Go to saangeltree.org, go through the process of, enter your zip code and go through the process of applying. You can do that because you can always come here to applicant records, and you can always delete it, right? You can always delete your test application. Our tip typically is, if you're going to do that, just put the word test in it. Like you can see this top one here. This is all sample data, but you can see this top one here has the word test in it so that we know, okay, this was us just playing around, and we can just click that red X and delete it. So feel free to do that. I could show you here and you could watch it in a video, but the best way is to just do it yourself sometimes so that you can get a real feel for what they're seeing. And it also helps you confirm that your campaign settings are what you think they are. So it's a very useful tool. If you haven't done it, I actually recommend that you do. Get your campaign set up, go to saangeltree.org, fill out an application. You can get the whole experience, and you're also getting the benefit of double checking your settings at the same time. I would think that's a very good idea. There's no reason not to do that. What are some examples of documents to require? So that's a little bit more of a procedural question, but just so we're all clear of what we're talking about here on the campaign setup, one of the things you're going to configure here, if you're using online applications, is under documents. You can configure what types of documents you want your applicants to upload. What you choose to request from them, I can't really say. That's more of a procedural thing. I would maybe poll some other corps and officers and figure out what they do. I've seen a lot of different things, but I can't necessarily recommend which ones you might upload. Here are some examples that we've seen, but it really depends on what you're looking for in order to verify. Typically, they're in the vein of either verifying the applicant and the angel's identity, making sure that the applicant is who they say they are and that the kids actually belong to them. And others fall in the camp of making sure they qualify, maybe some like financial information that determines if they qualify. So I can't really say what types of documents you should request, but these are some of the examples that we've seen in the past. A question about, is there a way to flag duplicate applications? This specifically says we process applications for a couple of other agencies, and last year I found clients applied to both, and so you end up with duplicates. There are a few different ways you can search for things like that. This is kind of an area we're wanting to expand and improve on as well. But if you do find duplicates, the best thing to do instead of deleting the application, like the duplicated application, the best thing to do is actually go in there and decline the application that's a duplicate so that you can keep a record of those. If you delete them, of course, they're kind of gone. So you can go into the application and select the status of declined. So decline, and then you would make a note in there to say this is a duplicate of XYZ. I won't spend a lot of time talking about it because it's very specific to only one territory. But if you're in the Central Territory, there's an additional step that you'll go through to check if this client already exists in the WellSky program, and if so, it will flag them with that ID. So then, if that person comes up again, we will be able to say, hey, this person's already been through this campaign. So like I said, we're trying to add some more features in that way. But the best advice is when you do find those applications, mark them as declined and write down the reason why they were declined. You may even notate the application number that it's a duplicate of, and that will all be contained in the history, what we call the history and comments. Close this. History comment section down at the clicking on the wrong thing. Down at the bottom of the application, you will see the history. So if it's declined, you would be able to see when it was declined, by who, and what reason you entered. So this is obviously a test application that we've done a lot of testing with. All right, so moving on. Can applicants upload those documents themselves? Yes, that is the idea there. So when you add documents to your online application, so this is where we were just looking, these required documents, And not only will it allow the applicant to upload the documents themselves, they are, in fact, required documents. So it won't let them go through until they have uploaded something in that area. So in this particular case, if it was this setup, it would not let me move forward until I've uploaded my ID. And it will not let me move forward until I've uploaded an award benefit letter. So it's actually going to force the applicant to do it. And that's part of what helps this process. It helps it become more streamlined. By the time you receive the application, it should have everything that you need. I mean, yeah, every now and then people are going to upload a bad copy and you're going to need to reach out to them to get a better one, or you're going to need to add some additional information, that kind of thing. But the idea is that the majority of the time, you've told them what you needed, the system requires them to upload it, and by the time you receive it, you can make a really quick judgment and approve them or decline them and move on to the next one. So yes, they can upload it themselves during the online process. That's another reason to just get in there and try one of those online applications, because you'll see how that works. You'll see what the user sees. So yes, they can. Now, having said that, you didn't ask this question, but I'll say it anyway. If you are doing what we call in-person application interviews or applications or intake, you are adding the applications yourself. If I go here, and you do that, of course, by going under new applicant. If you don't know that, you can learn all of that on the applicant intake video. But if you are doing in-person interviews, you will not be required to upload the documents. The idea is they probably show you the documents like face to face, and there's no reason for you to scan them and put them in the system if you don't want to. It won't force you to upload those documents like it does the applicant. So if they're doing it online, it's going to force them to upload them. But if you, as the administrator, are entering their application, it won't require you to do it. It will give you a place to upload them if you want to, but it won't require you to upload them. So I think that's important. That's an important distinction. And then if they do apply online, but for whatever reason, the documents they gave you weren't correct, or they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out how to upload the documents, whatever the case is, and they just want to bring them to your office. That's fine too. As the administrator, I would come here, I would find their application, I would go under required documents, I would click the pencil here, and then I would be able to upload their documents here for them. Okay, so, or I could change them. I could remove this one and add a new one. So you are able to do that. As an administrator, it won't force you, because you may just look at the document and say, okay, yeah, that's good enough, and not need to upload it, but it will force the applicant to do it online. Okay, going back, lots of new questions just come in. This is a great question. Can we do a hybrid of online and in-person applications? Absolutely. You can definitely do that. In fact, that's probably the majority of what we see. You'll do the majority of your applications online, but you're always going to have, seniors or families within your core, or, just specific scenarios where you want to be able to take their applications in person. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. Any single intake site. So if I go here under campaign admin, intake, just because you set this particular intake site to have online applications, so I open the online application, that doesn't mean that I can't always come here and go to a new applicant and add an application manually for that site. So you can do both, absolutely, is the answer. And in fact, most people do both to some extent, at least. Is it possible to delete sites from previous years? That's a good question. I don't believe so at the moment. So for historical reasons, we have, we obviously keep all of the information from last year so that you can go run reports and bring those sites forward for the next year. So there is no way at the moment, at least, to delete sites from here. Maybe in the future we can give you a way to hide the ones you don't need. But the important thing to understand, because this does throw people off every now and then, is just because a site is listed here doesn't necessarily mean anything. Just because a site is listed there doesn't mean it's in use. If I don't have one of those 4 check boxes checked although it's listed here under the sites tab, it's not being used for anything. The system doesn't care about it at this point. It's just there for historical purposes. So maybe someday we'll give a way to kind of hide those and maybe bring them forward when you need them in the future. But for now, there's no way to delete them. But as long as they don't have one of those 4 checkboxes, then it's not really hurting anything either. So hopefully that makes sense. This is an interesting question. Can we switch between angel tag templates using a different one for a different allocation site? That's a great question. Yeah, technically you could do that. So what you would need to do in order to accomplish that is you come here under campaign, select your tag template, and then you'll go to Angels, run the print job for whatever allocation you're wanting to run it for, and then you just need to come back here and change it again, and then go run your second print job for your second group. So basically, there's only one setting for the angel tag template that's here. There's only one setting, and whichever one is currently set is the way it's going to print. But there's nothing that stops you from changing it between print jobs, if that makes sense. That's an interesting question. I've never thought about that. It is a good question too. If an applicant fills out their application in Spanish, will the answers come up on our end in English? No, it won't. There is no kind of automatic translation that's happening. So that is a little bit of the downside of having the application be in Spanish. But the idea is that hopefully, because you've saved time from having to do in-person applications, which you would probably need a Spanish speaker for anyway, instead that person's time could be utilized reviewing those applications and maybe even making a translation back here and there if necessary. A question, if we decline, okay, this is kind of referring back to a previous question. If we decline the duplicated application, will they receive an email that it was declined, and is that going to be confusing? Yes, I can see how that could be confusing. That's why in the when you do decline an application, it gives you that little box to say why you're declining it. That information also goes to the applicant. So they would receive a notification that says this application has been declined. And what you would want to do in there is say, this one has been declined because it is a duplicate of another, and that one is still active or something like that, just so that it doesn't confuse them. But yeah, that's a good point. Is this being recorded? Yes, definitely. You can always go back and take a look. I think we did a session last week as well that had a few of the same questions, but a lot of different ones as well. So if you wanted to watch both, if you just have hours to sit around and watch the recordings, you're welcome to do that. We'll make both of those available on our YouTube library. So go ahead and subscribe there so that you know when those get posted. But yeah, this is being recorded. What is a special care application for? What a grand question. Let's go over to our application settings here. So you see special care intake listed here, and it actually gives you a definition there. This application is used for group registrations. So this is something, not everybody uses it. In fact, I would say it's probably a pretty small number of locations that use it. But the idea behind it is you have like a senior assisted living home or something, or maybe a group children's home even, where they're not typical families, right? It's a group that's registering all at once. Most often what we see is like senior nursing homes and things like this. So the idea is that you can create one bulk application under the organization, like so under, Shady Oaks nursing home, instead of under a specific family. And of course, when it's a family, we need lots of more information, and we need info about their income and if they qualify and all these things, where when it's a group registration, you don't need quite as much information. And then it allows me to add, 100 angels under the same application pretty quickly, rather than going through the typical, what we call family applicant intake. So that's what special care are used for. Once special care angels are in the system, they function pretty much just like any other angel. They'll be designated with a special code that says SC on it for special care. But they'll be in, when you go under applicant or angel records, they'll be in your angel records. They will be able to be allocated. They're able to be adopted. They function pretty much the same. It's just a difference in the application process, doing it in bulk rather than by family. So that's what special care applications are. Once the application is done online, do you still have to accept it? Yeah. So yes. So let me just really quickly, we're kind of out of time, I should say. We're kind of out of time, but if anybody wants to go ahead and jump off, feel free to do that. We are recording the rest of it. But if you want to stick around, I'll answer a few more questions or finish these ones out. So really quickly, let me kind of walk you through what the different levels are, like what the different statuses are. So when an application is begun online, we know that starts in a status of draft. Okay, I'm going to come here to my applicant record. It starts in a status of draft. When the applicant actually finishes their application and clicks that they're ready to submit it, that goes to a status that we call pending. So pending means they're finished with their application, but you need to review it. So your process here would be to go to your applicant records under use the filter, and I'm going to filter by a status of pending because that means those are the ones that I need to review. So I'll filter by a status of pending. I may even want to add a date, like applications that came in on a certain date that are pending. And now I know this is a list of applications that I actually need to go through. Then I'm going to open up each one of those applications. I'm going to review it. If I like it, I can what we call submit that. So it's now submitted, meaning it is officially in the program. It's not fully approved yet, but it is officially like in the program. We have submitted it. We have assigned it a distribution appointment. They are official now. You can also choose, like I showed you before, you can also choose to decline as well. So we can click decline. That would update to a status of decline. So they're kind of out of the system now. They're still, I don't say out of the system. Their information is still here. The application is here, but they're out of the pipeline. They're not moving forward. So if I decline them, they'll go to a status of decline. And then there's this option to return to applicant. This is almost like a little bit of a U-turn. So they submit their application, it goes to pending, but there's something missing, there's something confusing about it, we need additional documentation. You can choose to return to applicant. And here you can configure a message back to them to say, please upload a better copy of your ID, or this is not a valid form, like, I don't know, whatever you might want to tell them. So that's kind of like a U-turn. They go back and the application goes back to them and it stays in a status of return to applicant until they submit it again. Then once they submit it again, of course, it comes back to pending, where you would review it again because now it's back in your pending, and then ultimately you would submit it. It goes through several steps before it's just official. So just because someone applies online, to answer your specific question, just because someone applies online, no, it doesn't mean that they're automatically approved and nothing about the process tells them that they're approved. It's actually not until a final step. So even after it's submitted, they still don't know. It's not until the final step where you mark it as approved, what we call admin approved. That is the point where they are notified that their application has been accepted, and here's your distribution appointment, here's your family code, and all that good stuff. Okay, so yeah, you definitely don't have to worry about that. A question about barcodes and scanning. There is an entire video about barcodes and scanning. You want to take a look at that. There are lots of different ways to use them. Barcodes can be created for each angel and printed on tags. They can also be created for each family, which helps you during distribution to be able to quickly identify and pull up a family. So there is a video about that. I would recommend you take a look at that. And if you have specific questions about barcodes and how to use them, we will probably also be pushing out an announcement in the next several weeks about some new features to do with distribution and barcode scanning. So definitely keep an eye out for that as well. What instructions do you suggest giving to online adoption coordinators for corporations? Okay, so this is a good question. Let me see if I can think of the best way to. This is kind of a big topic. I want to say there was a webinar last year that had all to do with. let me make sure I'll still answer the question, but I just want to point it out. Yeah, there's one here. It's this webinar sponsors, allocations, and online adoptions. That's going to have in detail everything that you want to know about that. In fact, I would actually have your coordinator watch that. If you have an in-house person who's managing the corporate people, I would have them watch that for sure. But we do all of that under Angel Allocations. And the best thing to do when you have an allocation, when you create a new sponsored allocation, you're able to set them as. In fact, I'm going to pause my screen really quick and go somewhere else where I can actually show you what this looks like. But you can set them up as a sponsor, a corporate sponsor, and you can check the box that says allow online adoption. That will provide a very specific link for that allocation that you will hand to the coordinator, the adoption coordinator at that particular corporation. You will hand that to them, and they will be able to distribute that around to their employees or church members or whomever it is, and they would be able to manage the adoptions online. So it's actually really, really simple. I'm not saying it well because I can't quite get to where I can show you a good example of it. I'll get there in a second. But I would really, again, really strongly recommend that you take the time to watch that webinar from last year that has to do with sponsors and allocations, because that's going to cover everything in detail, how to actually allocate the angels, how to create the sponsor, and how to create that online adoption link, because that is I think that is one of the most helpful things in this whole system, besides the whole intake process. I think that is one of the best features of TSAM's Angel Tree, is that it really gives some really neat tools for your corporations to be able to manage their adoptions themselves and kind of manage that and do it all online. I think that's a really good tool. So it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get to exactly where I was trying to get to. But take a look at that training. Reach out to us if you need some additional information on that. But that should cover everything you need to know in there. All right, I am going to let our support team, continue answering a few questions offline here. A lot of people have very specific questions for their sites and how they get access and those kinds of things. So if we haven't followed up with you there in the chat, we will make sure to do that afterwards and make sure that you get the answers that you need. But I am going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. We've lost probably half the people anyway. But once again, this has been recorded, and we will make that available on our YouTube site, our YouTube channel. So go and subscribe to that so that you know when that gets updated. But thanks for being here today. Thanks for a lot of great questions. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you take nothing else away, it's just know that we're here to support and that you know how to reach us and how to utilize some of the tools that are out there to find the answers you need. But we certainly appreciate your time and hope you have a great rest of the day.